We do have some starter questions for panel, but we are hoping that there is audience involvement as well. So let's make that clear up front. We're going to start with, what are the key ingredients to a good safety culture?
I'll start with that. I think it really starts from the top down. You have to have total commitment from the presidents, from the vice presidents, from the general managers, and I think they really have to understand what your program is and what the values are, and make sure those values are being passed throughout the company, throughout the facilities. If you don't have a buy-in at the top, and when I talk buy-in, that includes money. There's a lot of changes when you start to look and try to identify exposures, the risks that you have at your facilities, and to make those corrections. And if you're telling your employees this is what we want to do, but then you don't back it up, it's just going to look like the flavor of the month. So I think that buy-in, total buy-in from the top down is one of the most important things you need.
I agree with Don. At Purdue, our kind of leadership commitment starts with our values. We have a 4P value system, and that 4P starts with people. People is safety. I mean, when it comes right down to it, safety is a people business. So that was one of the things that really led me to going to Purdue as a company. Purdue really cares about its associates. They start with people. They start with leadership. Our leaders, starting with Jim Purdue, they sit down and they develop these strategic plans. And the strategic plans are related to not just safety, but the culture of the organization, and making sure that everybody within the organization works together, plans, does the right things from a safety perspective. So I think in addition to that, good safety culture is coaching, training, and feedback. Feedback, I think, is the most important thing. And one of the things probably I learned from Don many years ago, going through the behavior-based safety process at behavioral accident, what's that? Behavioral BST, process, yeah. Behavioral Science Technology. So really, I think the feedback piece, the opportunity to communicate with associates and tell them what they're doing good. And part of what Don said earlier, tell them what they're doing good, tell them what you expect out of them, and then give them good guidance, feedback when they struggle, so that they get the point of what you want from a leadership standpoint. Leadership's the key, though.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. The other thing that I think is important is that safety's not standalone. It needs to just be integrated as part of the day. And it's, people talk about the conflict between safety and production, and the reason that they have a conflict is they think of them as two things. And it's really one thing. It's safe production. And when we can move the mindset towards, it's really about, we want to increase productivity while reducing the exposure, thus reducing the number of injuries. When we get that mindset in a leader, I think we've made the change, and we've moved the organization forward. So it's not about it being standalone. It's just part of us. It's the way in which we think and act as an organization and as leaders.
Yes. So how important is it to build a relationship with individual employees in building the safety culture?
Very important, obviously. And I think you can see when I go to our different facilities, the managers that have been excellent leaders in passing along these values, it moves at different speeds at different facilities. We've also put in some programs so that when we have our top management or president, vice president come to our facilities, they can easily recognize what employees have really bought in, as I call it, the champions of safety. We have a program where we have little stickers with a wheat chaff, and when an employee maybe identifies an exposure and comes up with a solution, helps implement that solution to eliminate that risk, they may get this wheat chaff to put on their hard hat. And we pass this on to like our group presidents, our general managers, that when you're at the facilities and you see an employee that might have several of these wheat chaffs, identify them, talk to them, find out what they did, because I think a lot of times they're really proud of it. So it's that recognition, that talking to them, that I think really makes the employees feel proud of what they've done.
I would agree with that. I think ultimately it's the coaching. I mean, we have leaders we have 60-some organizations and leaders at every single organization. Some do it a little differently than others, but ultimately it's just the process of looking at what the associate's doing and thanking him for doing a good job or thanking her for doing a good job. Leading by example. I know a lot of times managers may say, hey, I need you to get that done. And sometimes when we say something like that, we may be providing the wrong direction. That direction really should be, I need you to get that done safely. And a lot of our people are doing that now. We're really communicating, directly to the associates, directly to the teams. We ask them to determine, hey, can I do the job safely? If I can do the job safely, fine. But if not, step back, talk to people, make sure you understand what the job is, and make sure you understand the hazards associated with the job. We concentrate a lot on hazard recognition, recognizing the hazards prior to doing the job.
Whether or not someone thinks they have a relationship with their subordinates, they have a relationship. The employee has developed some form of connection or disconnect with their leader. And, this whole idea of relationship, that word can be confusing. We're talking about a business relationship. We're not talking about going out after work and having beers or playing. So, I mean, those are all things we can do and we do in our communities, but it's about the nature of the business relationship. And the plant that I worked at, the plant manager, we had 700 employees at that plant. Our plant manager knew every single employee's name. Now, I can't remember my name when I wake up some mornings, but here's a guy, Mike Ferris was his name. He knew every employee and he knew a little bit about them. We had people in that plant that would do anything for Mike. Now, they didn't know their own boss, but they knew Mike. The last point I want to make is that we work with organizations where an employee may only see their direct supervisor once a month, and sometimes once every 2 months, just by the nature of the work. They're independent workers. And if that interaction goes poorly, that employee remembers that, and it grows in their mind, and they spread that about how bad this leader is. And so the number of interactions that a leader has, they have to really think about, this has to go good. And so you have to think about relationship all the time. And more interactions with an employee that are bad interactions does not mean you have a better relationship, which some leaders seem to mistake. That, I'll have more of them, but they're bad. Doesn't help. It's not about the number of contacts, it's the positive contacts.
Okay. So how does your company communicate safety issues, lessons learned, and opportunities to your associates or employees?
I can start on that one. Typically, if we have an incident or we have something that is going on in the organization that's going to be hazardous or going to be an at-risk type situation, we will put out lessons learned and/or safety flashes. And those lessons learned are typically one sheet of paper with what has happened and what the corrective action is with pictures. And the same thing with the safety flashes. Maybe we learn something about a regulation, or we learn something about a site, learn something about a piece of equipment. That safety flash will tell you the safe way to work with that piece of equipment, or the safe way to do a certain thing. And what we ask when we send these flashes out is that the supervisors, the area managers, the organizations have crew meetings. We have regular toolbox meetings every morning, and then we have weekly safety meetings, but that they share these things with the organization. And then to make sure that we have follow-up, the leadership will come out and ask, or the safety managers, when they get to the site, will come out and ask, hey, have you seen this? And I mean, it's kind of a plan, do, check, act process, and it works pretty good. It gets the information out there, and it's kind of a, hey, this is a current event, and opportunities for training.
We have basically the same type of process. We call them exposure reports and incident reports. They are filled out, they go in a database, and they are sent out to every single facility in the company. And then we have our plant managers, supervisors go over those during a morning toolbox topic or during lunch with the employees to try to identify, might we have these same issues at our facilities? And, sometimes there's something that you'll see that's brought up, and if I see one that I think this is really good, I'll make sure that I send out a notice to everybody and say, I really want to make sure you go over this with your employees. So it's basically a heads up to everybody, and what's going on at this facility, and might you have the same issues at your facilities.
Well, I won't give you a specific. I'm a consultant. I always ask the question of leaders, if you have a critically important message that you need to get to every single employee, what's the way in which you get that message through your organization? Their ability to answer that question is pivotal. If they don't know, if they don't have a mechanism by which they can get a critically important message all the way through their organization, they have to work on that. Because if you can't, how as a leader can you influence people from a very high level if you can't even get your word out? And so your idea of, we got to go out and actually verify that our communication mechanisms are actually working, it's critical. I mean, it's critical to the change process that we're able to get the message out there. And you got to keep challenging with whether you're at a plant, as a plant manager, how is my message being communicated to the employees? And sometimes I'm going to go direct. Other times I'm going to go through my chain of command. It depends on the nature of the message.
I guess I'd like to ask the audience, how do you all communicate those type of issues? Is there any lessons learned that somebody can share? You have to talk loud, because I have bad ears from being in the factory many years.
I have about 7 different sites, so I travel every week, and I have what's called safety share. Every Monday I write a safety share. I put a picture of what I've seen on site. I highlight certain people, and I make it mandatory that every supervisor goes over the safety share, and that's considered our weekly safety meeting.
Great. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
One of my former groups, I'm a regional health and safety specialist, but one of my former groups in Canada, what they did when I would send something to the facility, whether it was a safety bulletin, a note that I typed up, on a given subject of anything, they put that into their computer system, and throughout the entire facilities, they
Thanks.
And
Anybody
I'll
else?
add that we formalized a training meeting recapping all of our injuries from the previous year across the organization and all of our SIF potential incidents, be it property damage, what have you. Train every one of the employees, and then every new employee that comes in the following year, we take them through every injury, what we could have done to prevent it, and just set the tone early as to, these things are real life that could happen, and like I say, we formalized it and then we change it every year, even though we've done the immediate communications, but we cycle back around to do that.
You kind of touched on what I was going to ask earlier. When you discussed the behavioral safety, people forget what you said, but they don't forget how you made them feel when you said it. How important is it to get that frontline supervisor, and you just answered this, how would you get them on board with where we've been in the last year? How critical is that new supervisor into keeping your safety culture at that level? How important is that, and how do you achieve that?
Well, I think it's very important. I think you have a new supervisor, he or she needs to go through new management orientation, and they need to understand the goals and objectives of the company, the goals and objectives of feedback. I mean, ultimately, feedback, it's two ways, but ultimately, like Don said, we want the person or the associate to walk away and feel good about what happened, even if it was a coaching exercise. Okay, the shortstop isn't catching the ball, but we're going to coach him on how to stay down, and then the guy that hits the home run, he pats him on the butt as he goes around the third base. I mean, we're thanking him for doing a great job, and to me, it's all about, you look at that team deal, and how do we create a team? How do we build a team? And it's all about talking to people. It's about communicating. It's about leading.
I'd say your frontline supervisors are critical because they're the people that your employees at your facility see every single day. One of the things that we've done with our new supervisors, we really like to put them through a safety admin position first. And so almost all of our newer supervisors have been safety admins at one point before they move into a supervisory role. So they have a strong background in the safety and the company's values and safety before they start.
If you look at the research, it's really clear. The relationship between the supervisor and the employee is the most predictive of performance. And we like to talk about culture as this thing that we have a culture. No, you don't. You have a whole bunch of subcultures based on, and you can have pockets of excellence and pockets of ugly in the same facility, and it really is leadership specific. And I mean, if we're going to improve as an organization, we have to raise the ship, which means even our best supervisors have to get a little bit better. And so we got to raise the bar for everybody. And not everybody's going to be our best supervisor, but we got to move them up a little bit. So it is absolutely. And then the last point I'll make is one of the critical metrics that I think demonstrates whether or not an organization is absolutely serious about safety is the amount of mentoring and coaching that a leader will commit to. If they're not willing to go out into the field with their supervisor, watch them do a safety activity and give them feedback, they're not committed to development. And so oftentimes we count the number of times a supervisor does something. Now let's start counting leader activities that demonstrate our commitment to that, developing that person.
All right, what are some barriers to the continuous improvement process?
Change. I mean, I think for us, one of the biggest things was change. We prided ourselves, if you asked anybody at our company, we were about customer service, and probably just like everybody else out there, you felt, we give the best customer service around. And one of the things I think we recognized our employees were, who are those people that get the job done. You can always go to, and they will get that job done at any cost. I remember at times, managers would look and say, I don't even want to know how you did it, but thank you, appreciate it. And so when we realized that, hey, we had to bring our safety values up to our customer service value and surpass our customer service value, and recognize that when it comes to customer service, if safety got in the way, safety trumped it. I think that was one of our biggest hurdles, because we had a culture or value in customer service for so many years, that was some pushback, and even it might have been from the office, it might have been from the merchandisers or the buying office. There were different levels, different areas. Sometimes it was from the employees themselves. They're like, hey, I've done this for 30 years, Don, don't worry, I'm good. And so I'd say it was an evolution. It wasn't a light switch. It didn't happen overnight. It took time.
Yeah, I think there are many barriers to continuous improvement in all of our workplaces. I mean, they're different in every workplace. Some of the elevators are older than others, and some of them have different maintenance, organizational factors. Some of the management leads differently. I mean, I'll tell a story about when I first got to Purdue. I talked to my leader, which Greg Rowe, he was supposed to be here, and Mr. Hanson talked for him a little earlier in the deal. But Greg told me that he thanked a lot of associates at one of our sites for doing a super job of loading a barge and beating the best record ever. And I don't know what the details are, but after doing that, he came back, and I mean, he's a safety leader, and he's a VP, and after doing that, he came back and said, did I do the wrong thing there? I'm thanking everybody for doing a great job, but did I send the wrong message? Because I know I used to be that guy that loaded that ship, and I know we maybe took some shortcuts here and there. So as leaders, I guess, to me, the thought process there is what we're saying is get her done, but we need to make sure we say get her done safely, get her done within our policies and procedures, because I had talked to Don about different guys doing things at the site and how they used to be done and what the norm was of the site then. And sometimes people go back to that when their leader asks them, hey, I really need this done. So just be cognizant of that. I think that's a big barrier to continuous improvement.
I'll agree with everything you've said, and the one thing that Ed Gershine is really the culture expert that we draw upon his thinking and his knowledge in the work that we do. And one of the things that really gets in the way is beliefs that the organization has that they're not even aware that they have. These are beliefs, and in some cases, you can't discuss these beliefs. And it offends people when you bring those beliefs forward. But there are beliefs in your organization that are influencing decisions and the way in which you act and behave as an organization that people don't understand. And so when you ask a really dumb question like, why do you do it that way? Well, we've always done it that way. You're getting into an area that you got to be really sensitive. And I have been kicked out of one organization where I brought up these beliefs, and the leadership just wasn't ready and prepared to hear it. They weren't prepared to really expose themselves and say, we are operating based on this set of beliefs, and that's okay, they weren't ready. But others, when you just have to be really careful, because there are beliefs out there that drive your leaders' thinking, and you got to uncover them, because if you don't get to the real issues that are preventing change.
In your earlier presentation before, you talked about leadership and having bad interactions, and that sometimes the leadership isn't the person who you designate. And I mean, I've seen that in plants I've been at where you could say this is the supervisor, but he's the one who's directing what's really going on here. I mean, yeah, he says, this supervisor says we need to do this, but this person has a lot of influence. Behavioral safety, for example, you have somebody out there who is a naysayer, who hates it, and has more influence than the supervisors and the management. So, not to go back to the whole conflict between management and supervisor, what is an approach, whether it be a supervisor or an hourly employee who's an influential and has those leadership natural abilities, to try and modify that to how you want it to fit into your culture? Because that can be absolutely 180 degrees from what you want your organization to be.
I mean, it's something that I probably learned from Don as well, breaking down barriers. I think ultimately, we want to find the leaders in our organizations. Sometimes the leaders are really good at doing things. Sometimes the leaders aren't really good at doing things, but they're still the leaders. So in your case, you have a person that maybe leads them down a primrose path versus doing the safe behaviors. They're doing more at-risk behaviors. So what you want to do is go sit down and have a cup of coffee with them. Go sit down and talk to them. Go sit down and communicate just one-on-one on what we really are guiding toward. What do we want to do? We really appreciate your feedback. You're super. You really lead the team. You're a team leader. Can you maybe put them on a team, have them lead a team. I mean, what it is we want to turn those guys around and make them advocates versus continuing to push back. And I'll tell you what, it's not easy. But I've had some successes, I've had some failures. But it is an opportunity. And like Don said earlier, this isn't easy. So we work through it.
Real quick, just to relate to that, there's a guy named Eddie who worked at a paper mill. Eddie had been fired 3 times, let go 6 times from this company, and management hated him. He was a union steward, but he had influence, and they wanted to implement behavior-based safety. Well, where Eddie went is where the organization went, and they made him the facilitator of the process, and he changed. I mean, here's a guy that had a passion for safety, but had no vehicle. All he did was run into walls, and given an opportunity to lead and actually giving him a focus, I mean, he was a changed person. So I think you got to seek out those naysayers early in the change process, and let's see if we can't get them involved, because I'm telling you, they have a perspective of the organization that we need on that team.
I agree with what was said up here. I mean, we've had instances where had to pull someone to the side. We thanked them for their leadership, and told them, hey, you're a valuable member of the team, but this is our program, and we have to stay between these lines. And I'd say usually the person, well, okay, reluctantly, but they come around. There's a few times we've had people that haven't, and quite honestly, by their actions, they weed themselves out of the company.
And I do want to reinforce that. I'm a big believer in giving people a chance and the power of positive feedback and recognition. But there comes a time in which a person is so disruptive to your culture, you got to deal with it. And that person can be at any level of your organization. And when we don't deal with them, I mean, that just creates more problems. And oftentimes we're afraid to step up and say, you know what? You're a really nice person. You're a great person. You're just in the wrong company. You got to do it. I don't want that to be the first tool, we pull out of the toolbox, but sometimes it's just not a great fit. Just related to that, one company, the CEO came out, and this was probably as big as they had all the supervisors and the managers in the room, and the CEO said, we're going to invest in your future. We're going to give each one of you a coach. We're going to give you training. We're going to give you development, and we're going to do this across the next 2 years. We're committed to your success. Some of you will elect that you don't want to go with us. That's okay. We're going to give you 2 years to decide. Now, he was telling them, we're moving this organization. We're changing the way in which we're leading, and you got a 2-year window to make the jump with us. You got to do that. You got to set expectations. We're moving this company. Hope you come along. I don't have a problem with that.
So how do you recognize the champions of safety at your facilities?
Well, I mentioned it earlier. One of the things that we did is we have a small sticker. I mean, it's sort of like how you see football teams and their helmets, they get stickers. We have criteria. Yeah, go blue. I got a Nebraska Husker out there. Just like a football team, how they recognized both individual players and team players, we sort of put a criteria together for employees as individuals, how they could earn a sticker, and also as a group, as a facility, how they could earn a sticker. And there were a few people at first that I think that that's sort of silly, but all of a sudden we started finding with some of these facilities, once some of the guys started getting these, then other people were like, hey, I had an idea, and this is what I think we can do to improve or eliminate this risk, and you start to see people gravitate towards it. And as I also said, we pass this information to our company leadership to make sure that when they're at the facilities, they recognize these employees for their actions.
Okay, I'm going to go a little bit off script because I know we have very, very little time left, but I did want to get one thing in that didn't get asked. So I have a question. Anybody out here ever go to a course called Safety is Attitude? Nobody. This is 25, 30 years ago that I went to this. The guy's name was Dick Kelly. He was from the Midwest somewhere. And it's funny, a lot of the safety trainings and the different things that I've gone through throughout my life really didn't stick with me the way this did. Dick had 3 major messages. One of them I kind of already put out there a little bit, but safety is a people business. And I think if you write that down and really think about it, I can't talk about all the communication and everything. I don't have time to. But think about that, and think about who's responsible for safety. Does anyone know the answer to that in this room?
We all are.
I am. And I think Dawn said that. If you ask anybody in your site, Dick said that in an 8-hour class probably 500 times. It was so important that I am responsible for safety. And Dawn talked about it today. If we as leaders, and everybody in here is a leader, if we take that responsibility seriously, then our subordinates and the people that we support and the organizations we support are going to take that as well. The third thing that he left me with is what management permits, management condones. And that is something as a leader that we really need to be cognizant of. We're walking through the facility, we're coaching people, but if we condone a behavior by walking by it or not addressing that behavior or not taking the opportunity to thank somebody. You just can't walk by somebody doing something good and not thank them. That's the most important thing we do. Soon, certain, positive. We need to be positive.
Can I just add one thing real quick? I think many times, your employees, they just want to be valued, and they want to feel like they are being heard. And when I was a plant manager, I think one of the best things that I did when we were talking about safety and rolling out safety, I called all the employees in. I said, I'm going to give you some homework. And I said, I want every one of you to take a week and really think about this, but I want you to write down the 2 or 3 most dangerous tasks that you do at work, whether it's something that you do every day or maybe once a month. But what are some of those tasks that just really give you an uneasy feeling? And I also want you to come up with some type of solution on how we can rectify that, how we can eliminate that risk to that task that you're doing. When the employees came back to me and I got a lot of really good feedback, then it was on my part. And I had to make sure we went through these and basically we corrected every single issue that they brought up. We made changes. And we spent some money. But wow, that we really all of a sudden got buy-in from the employees. We started seeing more and more employees come back to us and say, hey, this is something I've been doing for 15 years, but it's just not right. And who knows your facilities better than your employees, the people that work out there every day. So make sure you're really talking to them and asking them, where are the risks and what can we do? And put some ownership on them to come up with some of the solutions. I think it's more than just, I want to know what you don't like or what's dangerous out there. What are the solutions? What can we do to eliminate these risks?
All right. Well, thank you.